And the first lecture, as you can see on the screen already, is going to deal with augmented reality. So that is a topic that is also has also been taken up by Nokia, even here in Wrocław. And we have two speakers for this first session. These are Paweł Łabuz and Piotr Marek. Paweł is a C# Unity developer at Nokia in Wrocław. He is involved in the development of augmented reality. He is also a student of computer science at Wrocław University of Science and Technology. He generally likes when his code is fast and well optimized, so that, well, basically his apps and games are fun to use. And the other speaker, Piotr Marek, he is also a Unity developer at Nokia. He actually created the first Nokia in-house HoloLens solution, an implementation of augmented reality, and he has been working with this technology from its very beginning. He does believe that augmented reality is a market that is going to grow rapidly. So let's welcome Paweł Łabuz and Piotr Marek with the talk about augmented reality.
Good morning. It's very cold outside and it's very early, so I would like to double thank you for coming here. I hope you have enjoyed the opening by Bartosz Ciepluch. My name is Piotr Marek and I work in Nokia here in Wrocław.
Hello everyone, my name is Paweł Łabuz. I'm also a Unity developer at Nokia. We work together on some augmented reality topics for Microsoft HoloLens, and this is what we are going to focus on today. It is not our goal to go into some advanced programming issues with you, even though that we know that there are 300 or 400 talented programmers in this theater. We think that wouldn't be the most effective use of the next hour, so we prepare a condensed knowledge gained during our first year of experience with this device. So we hope that you enjoyed our presentation. And after this presentation, we want you to know 3 things. Everything you build on HoloLens, you must do by your own. You can't rely on the information from internet, because such doesn't exist yet. When you're building HoloLens app, you must to remember that you have to keep it simple and easy to use. And you have to remember that we are in very early stages in development for this device. Do you remember Jet Set Willy? Who have ever played this game? Yeah, I see a few hands. It's a game from 1984. And you have to remember that development for HoloLens is still immature, like it was in 90s when the Jet Set Willy was developed.
So there will be a bunch of tips and best practices that we gained during this 1 year of experience. Why we think this is important? The first reason, we believe that this is the technology of tomorrow. And the second reason, that we will show you some experiences that you probably will not find it on the internet. And we were lucky to have our applications tested by quite a lot of people, our demos. So the information that we will provide today is not based on our own assumptions or feelings, but this is based on research and people's feedback. So let's have a look at the agenda.
So these are today's topics. We'll begin with tell you what's the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality. Next, we talk about what do you need to develop something for HoloLens. Next, we will show you live streaming from HoloLens, which we'll be wearing on this stage. And we'll end with 6 mistakes that we made when we were creating HoloLens apps. Our presentation will take about 1 hour. At the end will be a Q&A session. Don't worry if you missed something. You can talk after the presentation, and also feel free to ask about anything in the Q&A session.
But before we start, we would like to ask you a few questions. Have you ever developed something for HoloLens? Please raise your hand who did it. Okay, just a few hands I can see. And who have ever used it? I don't know, maybe for playing games, just used. Okay, a few more, maybe 20 hands in the air. And who have ever used virtual reality? Almost a half of you, I think. So we can see that virtual reality is far more popular than augmented reality in this moment. And we have noticed that many people still confuse these two technologies. They seem to be similar, but in fact they are completely different, and AR does not equal VR. So to make that clear for this presentation, I will describe briefly both technologies. This is virtual reality, which means that you have actually no connection with the real world around you. This is a totally immersive experience. So you put on such glasses and you are in a completely virtual world. You are inside it. While this is augmented reality, which means that virtual objects, holograms, are rendered and overlaid on top of the real environment around you. And so maybe you are now asking yourself a question, which one is better? But we will not answer that question, because probably there is no answer for that question. As they are completely different, we can't compare them so straight way, because it all depends on the use case. And augmented reality is very useful when it comes to presenting a very complex three-dimensional data. Like in this example, this is the application that I think Microsoft released it. You can look to the inside of a human body. So, and you can walk around, you can enlarge those holograms, you can you know, see different layers of man. Great for learning purposes. So we've got the first use case. And I think this have future. Another use case for designers, when you have to design a construction of something very complex, this might be useful to see that in a real scale, to look to the inside, to walk around, to, yeah, that's a great example of use. And of course, sales and marketing, I think. Here we've got some buildings, some apartments, and a customer looking at this 3D model in HoloLens. So also, virtual reality is used for retail right now, and I think this would be used as well. And I think that you have now some use cases in your mind, so please keep them for yourself, and I think in the next few years there will be a possibility to make a good business out of them. So let's move on.
What do we need to do these amazing things? Firstly, we need a Unity program. Unity is a ultimate game development platform for build high quality 2D and 3D games. It's a very good 3D environment, so you can build interactive materials such as animation and visualizations. Also, you need a Holo Toolkit, which is Microsoft API. It is something that is intended to accelerate the development for HoloLens. Secondly, you need a Visual Studio. Of course, you know what is it. It's a program where you write down the code. But in this case, in HoloLens case, it's something like a bridge between ready-to-use HoloLens application and running an application on HoloLens. And of course, you need a device, Microsoft HoloLens, which costs now $5,000. We know that it isn't cheap, but we think it's worth it.
And now it's time for, this was the beginning, this was the introduction, and now it's time for the most interesting part of our presentation, live streaming. Paweł is putting on HoloLens, and we prepared an application with some simple holograms. It will be displayed here between us, and yes, you can see the live view from the camera which is inside HoloLens. And during this live streaming, we will show you a few basic features of HoloLens that makes this device kind of extraordinary. Yeah, and we prepared some simple holograms. We made them look like they were from 1990s. So actually, we are talking about one of the newest technologies available on the market. But we couldn't resist to make something which looks like this Jet Set Willy from the beginning or Mario game. So the first thing we want to focus on is spatial mapping. HoloLens somehow know where they are. The spatial mapping data is obtained all the time from the inbuilt sensors. These sensors are 4 environmental sensors, whatever Microsoft hidden behind this name, and 1 depth camera. So we have access to spatial mapping mesh. So let's have a look how it looks like. Now Paweł will switch on the spatial mapping on. So this triangular mesh is what HoloLens can see. This is the representation of the volumes in the surrounding of the device. And of course, it has been here all the time. It is always available when you have your device on. Now we just turned on rendering of its material. It could be any material, actually. We can change the color. Yeah, or we can even do something more stunning. Yeah, now you can see which parts of the cinema are scanned. One note here, this is just for the presentation, this bright material. Don't do it this way because it is very uncomfortable for users' eyes. Eyes get tired just after a few seconds when you see so bright image in front of you. And as I said, this mesh is updated all the time. Let's see how it works. I will stand in front of Paweł, in front of HoloLens, and I should be scanned just in a moment and covered with this spatial mapping mesh. I hope it will work.
There you are.
Yes. So now I am already scanned, and I will go back, and this mesh should disappear in a few seconds. So we can react to what happens in the environment around us. If somebody opens the door, if somebody walks in, sits on the chair, move some piece of furniture, we can react to that very dynamically. And as you can see, this mesh is not very detailed. In this application, we have, I think, 500 triangles per square meter. But this is enough. This is enough to get into the interaction with the environment around us. So I think we can get into interaction with these holograms for a moment. And just a simple, very simple action. So let's go to spatial understanding, because now we talked about spatial mapping, and another thing related to that is spatial understanding. It lets us recognize certain types of surfaces in the environment and distinguish between them. And this is the general idea. We have a room, and we can define that, for example, the biggest horizontal surface, which is the lowest one in that room, will be the floor. the big vertical surfaces in that room will be recognized as walls. And we can do the same with any other surfaces. For example, a little horizontal surface on a certain level above the floor will be chair, and we can go on with tables and so on and so on. I don't know if there is some limit how many queries you can do. And this is the straight way to place holograms in this room in a dynamic way. So we can decide that some holograms will appear on the floor, some holograms will be placed on the walls. So we are free to launch our application and play in any kind of space, any kind of room. So we can, for example, create a great game environment. This is a very big topic. I think there is another lecture today which covers spatial mapping and spatial understanding. We will not go to this topic deeply because we don't have time for that. So let's switch back to streaming. Okay. So we have spatial mapping, spatial understanding, and another thing we want to talk about is input. As you could have seen today, already during this presentation, Paweł was clicking on the cloud. And the way to interact with HoloLens is to do hand gestures. Hand gesture is the only way to interact with the HoloLens. And the most common gesture is tap gesture. So this is how it looks like. You have to put a hand in front of you and tap with a finger. That's all. It seems easy. I will show you later in this presentation that it's not always so obvious. Yeah, and this was tap gesture. We have another gestures, for example, tap, hold, and move, which enables us to increase or decrease any values in a smooth way. This is a bit like drag and drop on a PC. So you press finger, you hold it, and you move. So we can, for example, decrease or increase the angle rotation of this hologram. Yes, that's how it goes. This is also useful when you want to move your holograms forward, backward, right, left, just with a hand. You pick it and you move. And there are also some other gestures, but used not so often that we will not cover this today. And so let's have some interaction with these holograms also. We have only one rabbit, and rabbits usually don't exist alone, so I think we can make some more.
Actually, I know the whole rabbit family. So let's meet Uncle John, Grandma, elder brother, two sisters, and the other. I think it's all.
So now we have a regular rabbit population grown just in a moment, just like in their natural environment. Okay, now I will take another HoloLens and I will do the streaming, and Paweł will talk about some other features, basic features of HoloLens.
So, we have already told you about input gestures. There's another way to interact with your application. You can use your voice to do as many things as you would normally do with your hands. Yes, we can set up some specific words which will be recognized as triggers. This is very useful when you need your hands free for a while to do some action, or you wanted to just hide or show a menu of your application. Actually, Piotr know the deer's language, so Piotr maybe talk something to this deer.
Grow up.
Yeah, and we have we now have a big deer. Just remember that you have to pronounce words in the right way in English. This feature is also included in Holo Toolkit as all kind of inputs. As we can switch up the scene. And yeah, here we've got our platforms from Mario game. Can you see what is wrong with them? Because there is something wrong, like natural. Gravity doesn't affect them. They are floating in the air. And this is rather unnatural behavior that objects float in the air like this. Our holograms would probably look a bit better if they were somehow connected to the ground. So what if we could turn on the gravity? Yeah, our turtle is on his back now. Yeah, the gravity would have impact. Our holograms would behave in much more natural way then. Okay. During our live streaming today, we want to talk about two more things: cursor and raycast. We have cursor sticking to real objects around us. The cursor is that little dot, which looks like a donut. Do you see it? It's this blue one. Yeah, this essential kind of any for any kind of an interaction in HoloLens. Yes, for those who have game development background, this will be familiar. And how does HoloLens know that we are gazing directly in that certain point? This is a place where raycast comes to help. A raycast is a ray or a line. Yeah, could you turn on this? So the raycast is a line or a ray which starts inside HoloLens and pointing forward. And once this ray hits an object or surface, we have that point of collision. A point for our cursor. Okay. Can you see that line from my head? I think it's not working.
No, it's working. I can see it. So maybe the light is so
bright.
So bright we can switch positions that everybody can see. Now it should be a little better.
Okay, so this feature allows us to interact with real object around us, which includes a spatial mapping mesh, which Piotr was talking about. Okay, so this will be the end of our live stream today. We hope you enjoyed. So we can switch up the back to the slides. Okay. So to conclusion, we have told you about spatial mapping, spatial understanding, input gestures, voice commands, cursor, and raycast. We hope that you know now what is it and how it works.
But there is one more thing related to basic HoloLens features that we want to talk about today, and this is sharing holograms. Today, during this presentation, just a moment before, we had the same application deployed on both devices, running on both devices, and the same holograms were visible in one application and in the other application. I think this is one of the most cool features because you can have many people gazing at the same hologram, interacting with the same hologram, so it's not only one person experience. I will give you the idea how it works. So we have one user A, let's call him Andrew. And Andrew has just launched his HoloLens application and established a coordinate system in this place. He walks around the room and he decides to place a hologram 1 meter in front of him on the floor. This is just one application at this moment. And he decides to share his holograms with others. So he have to join to the sharing service. This is a very simple program included with HoloToolkit. So you have to join to that over Wi-Fi. And now, another user that can see that Andrew is having a great fun, let's call this guy Bart. He comes to the room and he launched his own application, the same one, but these are two instances of this application. So he has his own coordinate system. He walks around and he places his own hologram in 1 meter in front of him. He is not yet connected to the sharing service, but he connects. And once he is connected, the position of his coordinate system and the position of his holograms are the same as Andrew's holograms. So these are still 2 rabbits, but they have the same position and the same rotation. And if Andrew moves his rabbit from this place to this place, for example, the rabbit of Bart will do the same in the same time. And you can pass anything from one HoloLens to another, but this is done in, let's say, a bit low-level programming, because you can send only very primitive types from one HoloLens to another. So there's a lot of work with that, unfortunately. It's not so easy, but you can do anything. And as we noticed, this can bring some troubles because it doesn't work so good so far, but I hope it will be improved in the next generations of HoloToolkit, the next updates. So we've got sharing, and now it's time for the next part of our presentation. We have already covered basic features of HoloLens, of HoloToolkit, and now it will be a bit more personal. We will tell you about 6 mistakes that we have made when we were working on HoloLens development. We called it mistakes, but these were some assumptions and statements that we thought they would be true, but they appeared to be wrong. So it's said that learning by mistakes is one of the most powerful ways of learning, but it's much better when these are mistakes made by other people. So you can use our mistakes. So number 1.
People know how to operate HoloLens. If they don't, they learn quickly. And of course, this is not true. People don't know how to operate it and they don't learn quickly. Imagine that you are presenting your new HoloLens application to an investor. You have a great idea, a fantastic solution to a problem. Then you did research, designed the app, and coded it. It works perfectly. All features are included. So you have just made a speech, showed the numbers, and expected revenues. You are pretty sure that you have that money for your business, almost here. You ask people to have a try, to launch your app and see how it works. They are so excited. They never used HoloLens before. The curiosity is enormous. So they put HoloLens on and you watch them as they are start playing, and after a minute you hear, I see nothing, is it right? And the other person told you that I think it doesn't work on my device. And of course, this is a moment when investors don't put their money into your application. And this is a common scenario. We have seen it many times. So what's the solution then? Teach your users how to perform basic actions. You can also include an additional tutorial at the beginning of your app. Guide them with voice commands to make they sure that they feel safe and comfortable, and make sure that their attention is focused on the action. To be precise, an object or an action that is in front of them, not behind them. And a simple thing can do the job. An object floating in front of the user at the edge of their field of vision. It shows the direction where they should look. Remember, don't let your users get lost.
So that was number one, and now it's time for number two. So the mistake, the assumption number two, new technology can easily replace the current one just because it's new, cool, and exciting. And of course, this is not true. Let's have a look at this curve. This curve presents how new innovations and new technologies are adapted to the market. So we've got adoption on one axis and time since introduction on the other axis. And once a new technology is released, we've got some innovators at the beginning who start using that, some freaks. Then we've got some early adopters, and then it's the moment when majority of people start using this technology. And majority is split into early majority and late majority. And of course, once the technology is out of date and it's out of use, there will still be some laggards who will use it till the end of their lives because they are just used to it, no matter what new things exist on the market. How do you think, where are we now with HoloLens? Innovators, I've heard. Yes, I think the same. We are in the innovators. So it's the very, very beginning. And we were a bit naive that we thought that with this, maybe early adopters will come very fast. No, it doesn't happen so fast. The statistics tells that it must take time. How long? I don't know. I suppose that if I knew such things, I would be paid a bit more. But I don't. But I am pretty sure that this peak, this moment will come in a few years maybe, and we will see augmented reality in many fields of our life. Have you seen the latest iPhone? It has some augmented reality features built in. So this is happening. The augmented reality comes into our lives, little steps. And of course now this is just business-to-business solutions. As Paweł said at the beginning, HoloLens cost $5,000. So personally, I wouldn't buy it for just for fun, just for my home use, to play a few games. That's a bit too expensive for this moment. But there are some other devices appearing on the market which are a bit the same, which also offer augmented reality technology. So I think the price will go down in the next years, and we will be able to use it. But what can we do to make that process go a bit faster? In my opinion, we can produce really useful applications. I mean very useful, that make people's lives easier with this technology. By the way, do you know Kickstarter? Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform. People put some ideas, innovations, some products or services there, and you can put some money into that. And on Kickstarter, I watch it. There are many very innovative, very bright ideas which are very useful, but there are also many innovative ideas, very bright, that are completely not useful. So the point is here to create those really, really useful things, and then we will see this moment come a bit earlier. So that was number 2 and number 3 now.
Mistake number 3, UI design is not important. Of course, user interface is so important when you're designing your application. We prepared an example for this one. Yeah, our user has found his new Chewbacca slippers that he was looking for quite long time. This is Microsoft Edge Explorer, and yeah, our user is choosing a size right now. He's on checkout page, and it's time to fulfill all the necessary billing information. And this is a user interface which is constructed from default HoloLens keyboard, and this is really annoying. Look at him. How do you think? How much it will take? He doesn't know that the other user has a better user interface, and he's already bought his new Chewbacca slippers. We should think about user interface when we designing our app. Copying patterns from mobile, web, or desktop apps like this one doesn't work here. His new Chewbacca shoes are gone now. He doesn't know that. And he's still typing. Look at him.
So I think we can skip the rest of the movie because it takes so long. And we go to number 4. Mistake number 4, the assumption number 4. HoloToolkit will make the development process easy, fast, and smooth. And this sentence is a good joke. HoloToolkit is the framework for Unity that lets us create applications for HoloLens, and it's the only one. And the problem with this HoloToolkit is the documentation. Documentation exists, but it is rather brief. So we have described that there is a class A, and it's about to do this, and that's all. So you have to really dive into the code and try to understand what is going on there before you start building on that. That's I think the most problem. It takes time. And the other thing is that it is updated quite frequently. For example, it is completely different from its first versions now, and it's still changing. So we have to remember not to mix those versions together in one project, because then it's you can put it into trash. Yeah. And another, and we have made a print screen from console, from Unity, 92, I think, errors. That's the daily bread. And another mistake, we thought that community will help to fix our bugs. And this is another good joke. We have made a print screen from Microsoft Forum. Somebody has asked a question on September 12th. No answers still. Of course, there are people there is some community, but it's not big enough now, and it's not enough experienced to give us a really good help. It is not Stack Overflow. But it's growing. That's a good sign. When we started 1 year ago, there were just a few web pages talking about the development. Now it's better. It's getting better. I hope it will grow, and we will be able to get help from others.
Of course, you can't use HoloLens everywhere. Where are you in too bright places or too dark? HoloLens don't know where they are, so this sensors doesn't work properly. Also, imagine that you program that in your app, holograms always appear 2 meters in front of the user. And for example, our user have a smaller room, and 2 meters in front of him is a wall or even a surrounding room. So his hologram appears there in the wall. Spatial mapping mesh is on the wall, which we was talking about. So he's clicking the wall. He can't click his hologram. He can't interact with it. He can't do anything. So this is a problem which makes your application useless. To solve that simply, set positions of your holograms dynamically rather than placing them in fixed positions. So, in conclusion, firstly, we are in very early stages. Remember, just said from beginning, we are in the same stage of development in HoloLens. Secondly, internally is not going to happen. So many questions, no answers to them. We keep it simple and easy to use. Remember, do not use this keyboard. It's a mess. We are all available at our stage, which is in front to the enter to this cinema hall. Please come and visit us. We can show you our demos. We can talk about this topic. We can show you also our applications. So come and try it. This is our team. This presentation wouldn't happen without them. Really thanks to them.
Please give them an applause. They really work hard. And now, do you have any questions? I think we've got a microphone here.
Yeah, we have 2 microphones, so when you have a question, please raise your hand and you'll get the microphone.
Okay. Hi, my name is Grzegorz. I have a question about frames per second, because in virtual reality world, there is a rule and even restrictions from any devices that you should generate more or less 60 frames per rate to make your game, your presentation, etc., comfortable for human. Yeah. Do you measure frame rate on your application and compare this if you are using spatial mapping or switch off spatial mapping, etc.? And did you get this 60 frames per second?
We measured that many times. By default, HoloLens use 60 frames per second. And if your application is not too heavy, then it works like that. If there are some problems and the graphic engine cannot render that in a proper way, then this value goes down. And I have once put a very complex 3D model. It was the model of the hardware with all the details inside. This was the model designed for the production purposes. So every little details were very complex. It had about, as far as I remember, 5 million triangles. So then we had 5 or 6 frames per second. So it shouldn't be the models that are rendered shouldn't be too complex. That's the same what you have in virtual reality. Here, yes, but when you do the streaming, when you stream, it goes to 30. So it might have looked a bit not so smooth.
Do we have other questions?
Here we've got.
I have a question. Because while using virtual reality, you get some dizziness and fatigue after even a few minutes of using it. At least I do. And I have a question: does it happen here as well? Is it the same with augmented reality?
I think HoloLens is for 1 hour to use, no much more. If you are using HoloLens more, you have a headache.
But it's different from virtual reality, because here you have this connection with the floor, with the real environment around. So your head works in a normal way. You just have some holograms. If we made it so immersive like this, we had this white spatial mapping mesh, maybe in that case you would get sick after a few minutes. But normally it's not like in VR.
Okay, because in virtual reality you get dizzy because there's a lag between seeing the world and moving your head. So it's not the interaction isn't as fast as it could be. Does it happen here as well? What's the lag between moving around and seeing seeing objects? Because we saw on the live presentation there was a lag, but I don't know if it was a lag because of streaming or because the HoloLens.
It was because of streaming. We have about 2 or 3 seconds lag when we connect over Wi-Fi. But when you have it on your head, you don't see any lag.
Okay, thank you.
We have another question here.
Hi, my name is Michał. How does HoloLens handle environment which is very dynamic? For example, lots of moving parts, or if the user is not sneaking like you were during your presentations, but just walking quickly or even running. Does it handle it well, or does it just lose the frame of reference and panically try to find some place to find itself?
Generally, when you move very fast or you go from one room to another in a very fast, it loses tracking. So you get a message, I don't know what is written there, but you are out of tracking, and just stay and look around. HoloLens needs to get those anchor points again. But if you are in one room that is already scanned well, and you make rapid movements, then it works. Maybe you want to add something?
Yes, I think it's good.
We have another question over there, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to ask about the light sources, because I couldn't really tell if that was just ambient light or if there was some light source in your presentation. And it seems to me like it might look very unrealistic and out of place if obviously if the light sources are not representing the light sources in the real world. So are they set up statically beforehand, before you start the presentation, or do they adjust dynamically to what to where the light sources are placed actually in the room where you are using the HoloLens?
Yeah, we place our holograms to certain anchor point on the stage. We can move our holograms where is our spatial mapping. So if we can put them on these chairs or in the wall or even in this floor.
Yeah,
but lightning.
Yeah, I'm asking about lightning specifically.
I will answer that. We have never placed lightning in the scene in a dynamic way. We didn't try it. Maybe that's a good point to to try to do that somehow, we place it in a fixed way. So we put 1 or 2 or 3 sources of light in Unity for the scene, and here in this theater, in this room, this lighting is very unusual. Usually you have some sunlight coming from the window, or some light from the lamps. So it looks quite well. Usually. Here I know that it looked a bit strange, and that it was not connected with the ground because of those lights. Did I answer your question?
I was wondering, well, right now I'm wondering now, so is it possible to adjust the light sources dynamically, or you maybe you don't know yet?
We don't know yet.
Okay, so the best so the best way right now is to prepare the scene adjust it to the room where you are using the HoloLens, then, right? So
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's all.
Any other questions? Any other volunteers? If I can't see you, just shout.
Okay, we have here another question.
I would like to ask about this API. Is it made just for the Unity, because it's a rather poor engine? Is it some API for, I don't know, maybe Unreal Engine or different engines?
This is also for Unity.
Only for Unity.
Only for Unity, yes.
Thanks.
Next question here.
Me again. Can you is HoloLens able to make interactions with moving objects on the scene? Because you've shown that you can use the this ray with cursor and gestures, but can you, for example, I don't know, wave your hand to move the holograms, or maybe place a hologram on something moving on the scene?
When it comes to placing holograms on moving objects, the answer is no, as far as we have experienced that. Because when I stand here and I have this spatial mapping mesh on me, when I move, there will be another piece of spatial mapping mesh here, and when I move a bit here, and this first one will start disappearing now. So I don't think this is possible to stick object to my body, for example, and that it follows me. There was these masks. There was a Viking mask on Paweł's head, but it was sticked to the device, not to any other object. You can stick object to HoloLens. So I think no, it is not possible.
Okay, any other questions?
As we saw during the streaming, there is a big field of vision. On HoloLens, there is a few degrees that you can see in reality using HoloLens. And you also mentioned that your customers or potential customers try some apps. What is their feeling, their feelings about this small field of view? Because actually there is a really small field of view using HoloLens. What we see on the screen is quite bigger than you really see. Yes. So what is their feeling? They are disappointed because of this, because I didn't try to give HoloLens a lot of customers, and yeah, you already did this, so you have some feedback.
We are all disappointed about it. It's only 1,200 pixels per 700 something pixels. It's not big, and when you put it on, you have this. You see the boundaries of the displayed holograms. It doesn't cover all our field of view, but when it comes to streaming, it looks much better. Because you only see this field of view that is covered with holograms. You don't see all this space around with no holograms.
And we know that in HoloLens 2, there will be a wider field of vision.
Yeah, and all people generally they are a bit disappointed about it.
Okay, we can take the next question.
Here we've got one.
Okay.
I got a question. In this HoloLens toolkit, do you have hand tracking or just gesture recognition?
There is something like hand tracking because it's inbuilt. When you put your hand in the field of vision, or not just in the field of vision, but somewhere in front of you, in front of the device, then you have the event triggered that it is here. So you can react to that. But yeah, so yes, it is possible. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay, we have next question.
Question coming up over there.
You mentioned that there were some problems with input with the keyboard. So how do you propose we fix this problem? With hand tracking, that you have a virtual keyboard that you can type each key with each finger, or is there some other proposition how to fix this?
Yeah, you can use your voice to interact with your application.
Yeah, but for passwords it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So you have to pronounce A, B, C.
And make sure that nobody's around you.
So yeah.
We didn't know actually yet. We only know that this is terrible, this solution with keyboard. For the normal input, I think voice is good. For passwords, maybe just for password you need to use this keyboard for this moment. But in my opinion, voice has really future. We have Amazon Alexa, we have Google, how to pronounce it? Google. You can also search with voice. So these voice search engines are developed and it's getting better. I think this could be implemented here in a very good way. When it comes to the visual input, we didn't find a perfect solution.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay. There is next question.
Hello, I have a question about the processing power of HoloLens. What is it exactly? Because when you said that FPS is like there's a huge drop of FPS rate when there is like a few millions of polygons, right? So it's not that much. So could you please answer me, what's the processing power of HoloLens?
We don't remember. We can check it. We will be here after the presentation. There is a booth outside on the corridor. So please come to us and we will check that in the device portal on the Okay, so we've got it.
Okay, we have next question.
I have a question about the multiplayer stuff. You showed that the objects placed by two people can overlap and they are not really the same object. So can two people interact with other person's objects, and does it really work?
Yes, it's working. So they connect each other and they are clicking exactly the same hologram. Exactly the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it's possible.
But when two people try to move the same hologram on the same moment, then if you don't secure this, for example, only the person who clicked first can do the action right now and the others cannot, then you will see holograms flashing, you know, one will be here, and one frame you will see this, and one frame you will see that.
This technology is still immature.
I see a question in the back.
Hi, my name is Paweł, and I also have a question about this overlapping holograms. So, what if I wouldn't place a hologram at all, and I would like to connect to like the whole server of the HoloLens? Could I use some other people's hologram, but without placing of mine?
Generally, the rule is that you have, for example, we have three people, and the first person doesn't have any holograms. So, and the other persons, 2 and 3, have some holograms, and they are all connected through this sharing service. So those 2 will see their holograms, and they will see the changes made by others. But this first one wouldn't see it, because every application has their own instances of holograms. We just send a X, Y, and Z position. We send the rotation, and we need to have these holograms on every device.
Now a question in the front.
Okay, we have a question here.
My name is Daniel, and I would like to know if it's possible to outsource the rendering onto a normal PC with much greater graphical GPUs. Like
we didn't know. We didn't try it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let me answer the question. So it is actually possible to get the rendering done on the PC, but you're introducing latency there, depending on your Wi-Fi connection, of course. But it's called Unity remoting or something like that, and it's actually being used in. You can see the usage of that in the Unity editor, where you can fire up your HoloLens application and actually use it inside the editor. So that, I think that answers the question. But it's the whole rendering. I mean, the latency is so big that it's only useful in rather static scenarios, I would say.
Okay. I will continue topic with shared holograms. Because first question: how program or instance of program recognize that 2 people shared the same hologram? Because actually on Steam we can add different holograms. Yeah, let's say we have 3 objects. One person add one type of object. Second put second type of object. So it shouldn't be merged, I suppose, to one object on the scene. And during presentation you mentioned that you can add a simple objects that will be shared for everyone, that one person will. This is how it works now, that these primitives from Unity can be shared by one person, or it will not work?
Not only primitives, you can, in this case, these were some prefabs that were instantiated on the scene, on the stage, on both devices. So if I know that there will be, if I want to place something on the scene in one HoloLens and want it to be visible and also placed on the scene on the other devices, it has to be in the assets on the other devices also, and you need you need a function that will trigger that instantiation. And by the name, by the tag name, there are some possibilities to recognize objects in Unity. If one person have one hologram and the other person had different hologram, the first person will see his and the second will see their. That's how it works. Yes. Yes, yes.
Any questions coming up on that side?
Yes, I have here a question.
So I would like to maybe ask, maybe this is not a question, but just to sum up the idea behind the shared holograms. So is it basically, if I'm not mistaken, of course, is it basically like almost the same as a multiplayer game when you're sending, well, there is an object instantiated on both sides. So there are basically two objects, right? But you're sending the position and rotation and so on. So this is basically the same as a multiplayer game when you have the object on your own machine, but you get the position and the rest of information from the server, for example, right, from other players. So is it the same or is it similar, or I'm completely mistaken?
Yeah, I think it's the same as it is in multiplayer game. Sending an information to the other HoloLens, the second HoloLens catches it and instantiate the same object in the same position and rotation. Yeah.
Okay, next question here.
What are the theoretical and practical limitations of these shared objects technology right now? So you show us that two people can share the object, but what about, I don't know, 4, 8, maybe whole audience here, if we had 1,000 HoloLens or whatever?
We have 2 HoloLens only, so we didn't check it.
Okay, but do you maybe know if theoretically it's possible to do more than 2?
Just wait a minute, I'll give you the mic.
Yeah, I'm Maciek. I'm working at the development team as well, and I can answer your question. On the forum, while we were researching the development on the Microsoft forum, the main guy in the Microsoft that's responsible for development, Stephen Hodgson, I think it's his name. He was writing in this one post that they are testing 25 people sharing holograms in one room, and that's their like max capability. They had problems with latency mainly. And he said he will keep us updated, and of course there were no further posts. But I think that answers the question. Yeah, they were testing 25 people, so I guess it's possible.
Any other questions?
Okay, next question.
Hello. I would like to ask about the use cases in Nokia. How do you use the HoloLens right now?
Actually, it hasn't been published yet, so we can't tell you. We can't publish this information. It's still, I think, confidential. Unfortunately, we would like to talk about it, but we are not allowed.
Okay, but those are some kind of production way, or this is some experimental way right now?
Proof of concepts.
Okay, any questions on this side? One coming up.
one more question about these overlapping objects, because as we were told that each of the users has its own instance of an object. So what will happen if on my side I will, for example, change the size, so I could like resize as you did with the deer? What will the other user see? Like he will see two deers, one smaller, one bigger, or what will happen?
If you resize it on your side and resize your hologram is resized, and if you don't send a message with this resizing factor to the other HoloLens, nothing will happen. If you send it, there must be a method that is the receiver on the other devices. They receive that, they decode it, and you pass this argument to your resizing function. That's the way it goes.
Okay, any other ones? Coming up.
Currently, besides HoloLens, there are some early projects from other companies, like for example Project Tango from Google. And how current HoloLens API does anchor your applications to this solution? How do you think would be how hard would it be to prepare one application which could work on different kind of augmented reality devices?
I think Unity is ultimate game development platform, so you should switch to building for a smartphone, for example, in Google Tango, and you should reboot the user interface, set sensors in different way, and I think it works. Yeah, we heard about also AR Core, but we didn't check it yet.
Any other questions?
As you mentioned, AR Core and AR Kit are upcoming, and they're really fast in growing the development community. Do you think it's worth putting $5,000 in HoloLens if there are competing standards that are growing faster and with better documentation?
HoloLens are from different use cases. We think you're using HoloLens when you need your hands free, and you can use your smartphone only when you are holding in your hands. So it's completely different.
There are like daydream kits that you can just put the phone in the headset and you are hands free, just like with HoloLens.
So maybe that's worth considering.
Yes.
We will see which technology will fight the market and which one will be the most popular, and in the next months, in the next years. Of course, mobile phones have this advantage that they are much cheaper, as you said. So maybe they will win, but we don't know this yet.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
First of all, I think Project Tango has been put on hold. That's one thing. And the other thing is that even if you would put it into a Daydream headset, we have no way to interact with our digital content that appears on the screen, because all the mobile AR solutions are designed in a way that we touch the screen, and that's how we interact. There are no gestures and no voice commands, as far as I know. So there are still lots of limitations and work to be put into those mobile AR solutions.
Thank you.
I think we still have time for about one more question. So that might be your last
we have
chance.
A question here.
Did you also try some another devices for augmented reality? Because Epson has, for example, this Mayvano or something like that, which is quite better for industry because has some ISO certificate and can be used on in industry, etc. Or did you try only HoloLens?
We tried Lenovo Fab telephone with Google Tango, but we stopped developing for this because the level of this technology is not good enough. We wanted to wait for more information, for more documentation, not to lose time into digging into the code and trying so many things, and then nothing would come out of it. But we tried it.
Okay, last call for questions. Paweł, Piotr, do you have any concluding remarks, or are you ready to take the applause?
We would like to invite you once again to this booth on the corridor prepared by our team. You can put HoloLens on your head and play some games there. And I think that's all. Thank you.
Paweł Łabuz and Piotr Marek, thank you so much.